Hey everybody, I'm going to be doing something super fun today that I've wanted to do for a really long time, and that is a little bit of a form and analysis lesson, some music theory, and then additionally we're going to be looking at composing an original work or suite of works, depending on how much we get accomplished today, based on our analysis of fantasy music. So by the end of this, there's going to be hopefully several songs for which we can play them in the background of our D&D games, or whatever you want. There will be download links in the comments once this is all finished. All right. Stay tuned. So the first thing I wanted to look at very specifically was what constitutes fantasy music. Like when you think of a song that you might hear in a fantasy setting, what are you thinking about? That's the first thing we kind of need to address. So the first thing that came to my head was Lord of the Rings, right? Now there's been several iterations of Lord of the Rings. There was an animated Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and the music from that is not what I'm talking about. In fact, I'm talking about Howard Shore's masterstroke on the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings and Hobbit franchises. So I just want to take a couple, maybe 3 or 4 melodies from Howard Shore and just kind of look at them for a second and do like a very cursory examination of the theory behind those. So unfortunately I can't remember the name of all of these tunes, but I'm sure like as soon as I play them you'll be like, oh yes, I remember that from the movie. So there was one that sounded a little something like this. You guys remember that one? That one, maybe The Mines of Moria. I really wish I could tell you what the names were. But let's look at what's happening there. So I'm playing this in the key of G minor, and the first few notes follow that chord. Right? Just outlines the chord in a second inversion, and then we have this, which is important. I'm going to be talking about that movement a lot. That is called the flat 7. That's important is the flat 7 only occurs in the minor modality, so only in the minor scales and in minor keys and whatnot. But you can also see it occur in the major mode as a borrowed chord. And you see this most frequently in a specific chord progression. I wish it had a name. I don't think it does. It might. If it does, I don't know it. But it's the flat 6, flat 7, 1 cadence. So you'll have like the perfect cadence, which sounds like this. Sounds very familiar. It's because it's one of the most well-used cadences in all of Western music. 1, 4, 5, 1. That's been borrowed, like in jazz, they turned it into a 2 instead of a 4, because there's a stronger push to the 5 in some schools of thought. So that's 1, 2, 5, 1. There's the deceptive cadence, which goes to the 6. 6 minor right there. There's the plagal cadence, which just results from the 4. So there's lots of different cadences, with the flat 6, flat 7, 1. it's not really one we learned in school, but it happens a lot. And it happens when there's almost like a sense of majesty, because it defies the expectation to stay in the minor modality, flat 6, flat 7, 1 minor, and resolves to the major. So that's the flat 6, flat 7, 1. So we have, something kind of like that right now. We're going to the flat 7, but then the first time we go to a minor 4, and it's a plagal cadence that resolves back, flat 7, and then a major 4, which gives it more of that feeling of, resolving to the major, having that sort of diversion, I can't think of the word I'm looking for. Not subterfuge, but like, it kind of tricks you. You're thinking that it's going to be minor, and it goes major, and it gives that sense of awe and majesty. So that's one of the songs. We looked at that. That's got some plagal cadences, 4 resolving to 1, minor and major plagal cadences, and it also has that movement to the flat 7. Okay, there's another one that was a theme for the Hobbits. I think it was just called The Shire or something like that. Again, sorry, I don't know the names of these, but it goes something like this. Right? Okay, so in that piece, we start in C major. At least I am. It might be in a different key. So that all outlines C major with the added 9th, that note right there. It uses it as a passing tone both times. That's still the C major chord, but then we go to a major plagal. So we hit the 4 here. And that one's interesting because it hits a Lydian 4, and it also adds the 9. Goes back to the 1, then to the 5. So there's nothing really exceptional about that tune. It's 1-4-5-1, just a little out of order. You could even argue that C is an extension of the 5, so then it is 1-4-5-1. But that's not the whole melody. Right here goes to the flat 7. What's interesting about what I just played? C major, B flat major, that's the flat 7. Then it climbs up. Right here, we're on the flat 6. But instead of going from flat 6 to flat 7, we go through E flat, which is flat 3. There's your flat 7. So it's a flat 6, flat 7, 1 cadence, but with the added flat 3. And the reason that's kind of funny and interesting is the flat 3, flat 6, and flat 7 are the only changes from major to minor. So not only were all of those chords diatonically major, but they're also, it's the only major chords in the minor modality, so when you're playing with the one major, it doesn't sound like you should be going to the one major. It sounds like you should be going to the one minor. So far we've got 2 songs from fantasy music that are using plagal cadences, which colloquially my theory teacher in college used to refer to it as the amen cadence, because in a lot of old sacred music you would hear so that's the plagal cadence right there, and it also is known as like giving a sort of sense of majesty to a piece. So the flat 6, flat 7, 1, and variations thereof, and the plagal cadence and variations thereof tend to be the 2 things that at least Howard Shore used to sort of find that grandiose nature of the piece and sort of add majesty to what he was doing. Now, there was also very, very excellent characterization between the different themes. So if it was a theme for hobbits, everything was super lighthearted and simple, right? Just like the hobbits were. It borrowed a lot from what sounded like sort of Celtic folk. That was a common 1-4-5-1. As I said, it's super common in Western music, but if you go back and listen to a lot of Irish folk, for instance, there's a lot of 1-4-5-1 in those songs too, especially like bar songs, drinking songs. 1-4-5-1. There's that progression is everywhere. And then the flat 6, flat 7, 1 was used elsewhere. The tunes that were accompanying sadder parts of the film skewed into the minor. Whenever the characters were experiencing something awesome, there would be this big grandiose feeling to the music. The hobbits had happy music. Even regionally, you could tell there were some like differences in the music. The writers of Rohan had a lot of like string instrumental sort of incidental music, and Gondor and Mordor, they both had a lot of brass. So it really depended, like, Howard Shore did a phenomenal job writing the music to those movies. So it wasn't just, I don't want to sound reductivist by saying, oh yeah, you just throw in some 4 chords and flat 6, flat 7 and you can write music like Howard Shore. Now you have to pay attention to the little things too. So that's a good start for now. I think moving forward, we should look at maybe some other fantasy composers and figure out what sort of encompasses their sound for a good like fantasy feeling.